Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Musical Prisms podcast. I'm Wayne. I'm today being joined by Tom Curless of Curlessmania. And if you watch the first episode, you know what's coming. It's time for the big intro. He is the Nostradamus of New Wave, the pontificator of post-punk, the Aristotle of the album battle, the mania so strong the Beatles, Hulk Hogan, and Jesus would be jealous, the host of curlessmania, Tom Curless.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne. That is awesome. What an intro. I love it. Thank you so much. That's good. I love it.
Not a problem. So what I usually do here is I give a little bit of history before we start the discussion about the album. So the album we're going to be talking about today is Rust Never Sleeps by Neil Young. The album was released January 22nd, 1979. Genres are folk rock, hard rock, proto-grunge. Album is actually leftovers from, 4 of the songs are leftovers from his Zuma sessions, and which are Pocahontas, Ride My Llama, Powderfinger, and Sedan Delivery. And this is, I believe, the first time he did the same song at the beginning, same song at the end experiment, which also shows up, I believe, 10 years later on Freedom with Rockin' in the Free World. And the album title, Rust Never Sleeps, was actually given to him by Devo's vocalist, Mark Mothersbaugh. So, Tom, the first question I want to ask you, how did you discover this album?
Wow. Well, I grew up a Neil Young fan. I've been a Neil Young fan for a very long time. I say this a lot, but it was a big effect on me. I had older sisters. I had 3 older sisters, and they one of the sisters had Deja Vu when I was really little, and I remember listening to Deja Vu when I was like 8 or 9 years old and being pretty into it. And so that started my whole thing with CSN, CSNY, and then of course Neil Young. So I started collecting Neil Young pretty early on. And so I actually do remember when this album was released in 79. I was 10. So I remember when it got released, but I didn't buy it or get it until I think I was like 15 or something like that. So I had it, but I did have it pretty early on, and because I was a fan and I was collecting, I was doing my best to collect Neil Young as much, whenever I had the money, or if I could tape albums from people or whatever, I would do that too. So, but I had this album. I think I was about 15 or 16 when I first heard the record all the way through.
Okay, like for me, the first time I remember listening to this was I know for years you'd always hear the songs My Hey Hey Out of the Blue and Hey Hey My Into the Black always played on the radio from this album. So I remember going
Yeah.
to CD Plus, 2007, got my first job where I went out buying music and went CD Plus, seen this album, and I always was struck by the title, Rust Never Sleeps. And I'm like, okay, I recognize 2 songs off of here. What's on the rest of it? I just kind of took a blind chance on it for the
Hmm.
rest of it. And I've listened to it off and on through the years, but I absolutely keep coming back to this album as probably one of my favorite Neil Young records.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to agree. It's hard to disagree with that. It's a really strong album for sure.
Yeah. So the album starts off with My Hey Hey Out of the Blue. Killer acoustic track. Like the first half of this is all acoustic and then electric, but really enjoy that track. That dan, 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 dan. There's just something about it that just always puts me at ease with it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think this was the first time you had mentioned the first time that he had done like a bookending songs kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think this was also the first time that he separated the acoustic from the electric songs.
Okay.
And yeah, so the acoustic is side one and electric is side two. And I also have to mention before I forget that a lot of these songs were recorded live and then done with studio overdubs later. Um,
Okay.
yes, so he recorded like 10 shows or something acoustic at the boarding house in San Francisco, and then kind of souped them up in the studio and then did some overdubs as well. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
cool way to tackle a record.
because I do notice as the song goes along, right as it gets near the end, you get the crowd coming in a little
Mhm.
bit in there to prove it's live and
Yes, yeah, they did their
all that.
best to sort of get rid of the crowd noise, but you can hear it. Like you said, there's points where you go, "Oh, I can hear the crowd a little bit." Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
especially with noise canceling headphones really becomes obvious
yeah.
after.
Yes.
But
Yes, but what a great way to kick off the record. I mean, what a awesome. I agree with you. What a great melody. And I mean, how can you forget rock and roll will never die. It's better to burn out than to fade away, better to burn out than to rust. I mean, such cool lyrics too.
yeah, it's funny that I was reading up on this song, and he said that the acoustic one was the original one he had, but later on, I guess Devo's vocalist, who I guess was a art or advertising art and all this stuff, remembered from Rust-Oleum Paint, Rust Never Sleeps.
Yes. Yes,
And
indeed.
it really got Neil thinking. He's like, that strikes me. And that's how the second one got made. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I think he was jamming with Devo, right? He was
Yeah.
somehow he ended up jamming with Devo, and he was really into Devo, and they were in the movie Human Highway, which he had just made, and that's somehow from that they ended up jamming, and that's how somebody said something, like you said, Mark the lead singer said something about Russ Never Sleeps, and he was like, "Ooh, that's awesome. I love that."
That's a great line. I can never
Yeah.
forget that.
Can I steal that?
Yeah. But this is also where Neil mentions in the song Johnny Rotten.
Mhm.
And now Neil has said in interviews later on that he never personally ever met Johnny Rotten, that it was more he was talking about the idea of what Johnny Rotten and punk did to music at that time, kind of gave it that jolt it
Mhm.
really needed, that energy back
Mhm.
for rock stars. And the whole Russ Never Sleeps thing kind of coming from kind of like progression. It was his roundabout way of talking about progressing, evolving. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, then you kind of become stagnant. You kind of become like rust, and you kind of fade away.
Yes, yes, and we know from Neil, we've seen his career. I mean, he is a very restless artist, right? He's always wanting to move forward, always wanting to do, even if it's crazy, right? You go, why
Yeah,
is he doing that? But it was like one of those where he just never wanted to stay still for long. He always wanted to be going in different directions. And so I think the Rust Never Sleeps really spoke to him because he didn't want to rust. He wanted to continue being a viable artist,
yeah.
you know?
And talking about his that movie there leads into the second song, Thrasher, which is probably my top three favorite Neil Young songs that
Oh,
I've heard so
so
far.
good. So good. Oh, I love Thrasher.
Yeah. And there's a line in there where he like the lines that really, really speak to me in this song is the whole he's like talking about like crystal canyons and all this, and talking about how the aimless light of science slashed the pearly gates. It was then that I knew I had enough for my credit card for fuel. Went out to where the pavement turns to sand. And then later in the song, as he's going along, he just starts writing, well, then I had enough. They were just dead weight to me. And he said in interviews, it was his way of saying, I'm done with Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep, yep. I mean, what a poetic way to say, "I'm out of here. I burned my credit card for fuel." I just love the lyrics on this song are just so, and every time I hear this song, I sing the whole thing from beginning to end. Like it's because it's such a, it doesn't really rhyme much, but it has this sort of cadence that just keeps
Yeah.
going through the whole song. And like you said, that whole like, they were lost in crystal canyons, and I just love the whole, like you said, what I got bored and left them there. They were just dead weight to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is harsh. That's kind of a harsh thing, but he said he didn't mean it, but he said that's the way I felt.
Yeah.
I had to get out of there because he was not getting along with them, and they weren't on the same page, and he couldn't deal with them anymore, so he left.
Yeah, and the whole like it's a beautiful, majestic song. Like I hadn't listened up until I started doing that song for over 10 years. And as soon as it started playing, I could recite every line of this song.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
oh man,
Yep.
big park bench mutations, just and one thing that I really noticed about the first two songs on here, uh the harmonica is almost replacing the guitar solo, where you'd think
Yes.
most bands would have like a guitar solo. Instead, Neil's like, I'll pull the Bob Dylan. Let's bring out the harmonica.
Yes. Yes, I love it. Yeah, and he's playing a 12-string acoustic, which is interesting. He doesn't usually
Yeah.
do that. He's playing a 12-string through most of these songs, actually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, just a beautiful song. If you haven't heard this song, I definitely say check it out. It is absolutely gorgeous. The
Yeah.
third song on here, Ride My Llama, which is about a Neil pretty much on an extraterrestrial ride with aliens and just kind of his own, how did he put it? Extraterrestrial kind of adventure through this song.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those songs you kinda listen to and you go, "I'm not quite sure where he's getting at with this." I think he's just having
Yeah.
some fun. You know, what is it? "I met a man from Mars, he picked up all my guitars and played me traveling songs." So I just
Yeah.
think it's sort of like a just a fun sort of fantasy song or something.
Yeah, it's really good. I remember for a Battle of the Bands, I learned to play this song for
Yeah,
it.
oh, did you? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
nice.
a fun song to play, and then it's like, and all of a sudden, like right in the middle, there's like that nice little lush vocal where it's like, kind of as
Yes.
if like
Yes, he
the
does sort of like a little harmony thing in the middle. Yes. Yes. And it's really pretty. All of a sudden it gets real pretty. You're like, "Whoa, where's this coming from?"
yeah, it kind
You
of
know?
felt like I think I had written here that it kind of felt like is Neil Young kind of having like his Queen moment
Right. Right.
with
Exactly.
it because
Yeah.
it felt like something Queen would do.
But
Uh,
it's got that, again, it's got that sort of "Gonna ride my lamb
mhm,
from Peru to Texarkana." I mean, it's just it's like
yeah.
gonna ride him good in my old neighborhood. It's kind of a playful, fun song. I think it's really unique though. It's very Neil, very Neil.
Yes, very, very
You know.
Neil. And it's like you said, I want to ride my Rolamo from Peru to Texarkana. Most people be like, where the heck did that come from?
Yeah, it's just like random.
But
Very.
as my dad always explained to me, it was the 70s.
Yes, exactly, exactly, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
It might
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, might have been enhanced by something when he was writing. Who
Oh yeah,
knows?
yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, uh, the next song on the album, going from fun and fantasy to something a lot more serious, Pocahontas.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
I remember the first time I heard this song, I remember he's talking about like kind of the Native American, how they were kind of treated and everything. And then at the end, it's mentioning Pocahontas, Marlon Brando, and me. And I'm like, wait, where the heck does Marlon Brando come in here? And it made me go back and actually read up on it. And it was mainly Neil's response to Marlon Brando sending a Native American or Canadian Eskimo or something up to accept an Academy Award and talk a lot about the issues.
Yes, yes. And you could see Neil just loving that, right? Like, Neil's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, you go, Marlon." He didn't accept the award. He sent a Native American up there to talk about issues. How cool is that? I can see him loving
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, I remember he said he was what was it? I think he said he was around a potbelly stove, and
Yes.
this
Yeah.
song just came to him, and the lyrics to it, like they massacred the buffalo, they shot our women down. Like it's a very dark song when you look at it lyrically, but the way Neil kind of comes at it is it feels a little bit more upbeat, and you're like, wait a minute, like this is interesting.
Yes, yes, and it's almost like you're right, because I for the longest time I was like, what's this with Marlon Brando thing at the end? I don't understand. And now it makes so much more sense when you understand that story, and that he's
Yes.
basically saying, hey, maybe Marlon Brando can sit around by the fire with us and talk about these issues or whatever.
Yeah,
You know?
and but there's a line in there like talking about giving 1,000 pelts to sleep with Pocahontas to see how she felt.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yes, yes. I mean, still some playfulness in there too. So
Yeah.
there you go.
On to song
Uh,
number 5 on this album, Sail Away. This is actually the last acoustic track, but it's actually really a gorgeous song to listen to. Um,
mhm.
I believe it's Nicolette Larson is also on this singing with Neil.
Yes, that's correct. Yep. Yep, and
Yeah.
what a beautiful vocal she does. Oh, what a great performance from her.
Yes.
Oh,
Like this is like I remember listening to this. This took me a really long time to get into this song. I have no idea why. It's just
mhm,
one of those where I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's just because by that point you know what's coming up, so you're kind of
right,
like rushing through. But
mhm.
listening to this song, just a gorgeous arrangement.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it sounds this one is the kind of the outlier of the record, and if you listen to it, and I had read up on this, that this was an outtake from the previous record, Comes a Time.
Okay.
And if you listen to it, you go, "Oh, this sounds a lot like something from Comes a Time." But it's a beautiful, like to your point, great arrangement, beautiful vocals. I really love this. It's a great, the melody. I love the chorus melody.
Yes. Oh man.
You know,
Think about like 1970s. How many bands had a song called Sail Away?
I never thought of that's a good point. I didn't think about that, but there's a lot.
Yeah, I'm like, because I know, oh, who was it? Yeah, a bunch of bands did like kind of these sailing songs. I know Scott talks a lot about the 80s, talking a lot about cameras, but in the 70s, it kind of felt like everybody in their boat.
Right, right, exactly. Come sail away, sailing.
Yeah.
A lot of sailing
Yeah,
going
and
on.
I know Neil did talk about how the lyrics kind of celebrate the feeling of freedom that comes with changing one's setting.
Yeah, yeah,
And like how many people like just would always be like, you know what, I just love a change and just the freedom of it and being able to escape. Uh, Next song on the album is probably one of his most critically loved songs, Powderfinger.
wow. What a song.
Yeah.
What a song. This is like one of Neil Young's masterpieces. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a great way to kick off the electric side of this. I think I know there's a bunch of songs that he wrote, like Ride the Llama. He said he wrote the same day as Cortez the Killer.
That's a good day of writing right there.
Yeah, but uh, Powderfinger, I was shocked when I learned that this was actually offered to Leonard Skinner for
Yes,
one
I
of
I
their
saw that. Yes. Yeah.
albums, and just because like Ronnie Van Zant passed away in that, never got the chance to actually put it on an album or to see what Skinner would do with it. But I always found that weird considering that kind of beef Skinner and Neil Young kind of had in the
Yeah.
mid
Yeah.
70s.
Well, Neil loved it. He didn't consider it a beef. He thought it was hilarious that they said, and that, and what is it? Is it Sweet Home Alabama?
Yeah.
Yeah, where they
Heard
say,
old Neil put her down.
Yeah, yeah, and who cares what Neil Young what is it? What's the lyric? And it's
Oh,
something about
yeah. Hope Neil Young will remember that a Southern man won't need him around anyhow.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and Neil thought it was great. He thought, oh, man, that's so awesome that they replied and in a song, and he thought it was awesome. He didn't think it, so he loved it. So I guess he became
Yeah.
a fan of Leonard Skinner after that or something.
Kind
So
of the first disc track, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's pretty in your face about it, and but man, it's interesting that he was gonna give this song away. That's crazy, right? He's gonna
Yeah.
give this away. Oh my
Oh
god.
man. Yeah, like Powderfinger, like it's just the way Neil's able to convey this, like that whole line of I just turned 22. I'm wondering what to do. And the more I thought, the more my feelings grew,
Yeah,
or something like
yeah.
that.
Yes, that's got I think that's pretty close. That's it. I mean, and then I also love the line. I just love the line of I think you're better call John because it don't look like they're here to deliver the mail. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great way to say like it's ominous, like something's there. These
Yeah.
boats coming up the river and it's not good. You know?
Oh, the other line I always remember from this is Big John's been drinking since the river took Galilee.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's another great line. I
Oh
mean, this
man, it's
this album is. I mean, this song is just packed with those great lines. Um,
memorable. The great thing about this is it's kind of a straightforward rock song, so it's not like Neil where it'd get later where it'd become very abrasive
right.
in some of his songs. Like this is actually very kind of you can almost sit back, listen to it with headphones on, and just kind of melt away with it.
Yes, yes, it's like a perfect rhythm. It's like a perfect the way it doesn't it's not rushed. It's kind of like mid-tempo the whole
Yep.
time, but it works so well. It works so well, and I love how you feel like you're kind of dropped into the middle of a story. Like it's almost
Yep.
like it feels like you're this song when you're dropped into the middle of a scene. Like, oh, what's happening here? What's going on? It feels like there was something happened before this that you don't know about. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah, it has a I love the guitar solo in this song as well. Like this is really where you start getting into the more guitar solo aspect of this album.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh god, yeah. I mean, and this is again, I think this is a perfect example of the how it's a live track and it kind of has that
Yeah.
feel, right? And he's got that sort of live guitar sound feel on it, and the solo is just again, Neil doesn't play these amazing, great, like oh my god, like Eddie Van Halen type solos. They're kind of simple, but they're so effective. Just the way he does it, he knows what to do. You know?
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of kind of in a roundabout way Frank Zappa where when he wanted to be serious, he would always write simple.
Yeah.
Like when he was doing like a song like Uncle Remus where he's talking about race relations in the song. It's probably a more straightforward rock song. And
Right.
that's where people could understand. That's where Frank's really being serious.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he wants to get to the average person,
Yeah.
right? Um, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think that Neil has a similar approach on this. I think you're right. I think he's absolutely right. I mean, here's a question for you though: does the protagonist? I mean, I'm assuming the protagonist gets shot and dies. Is that your take on this song? Because he's
Never really thought about it.
because he says something about raised my rifle to my eye, never stopped to wonder why. Then I saw black and my face splashed in the sky.
Yeah, probably
It's
sounds
kind
like
of
it.
yeah, you're like, I think he got shot and died. Yeah.
It kind of feels like for movie buffs, like kind of the end to All Quiet on the Western Front
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end, where he just sitting there drawing a bird, and all of a sudden he's dead, and then the movie's over.
It's over and then the credits roll.
It,
Yeah.
as my dad would say, it's a very typical '70s movie. The hero dies.
Right, right. Yeah, they stopped doing that after the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Uh, on to the next track, Welfare Mothers. To me, this song feels like it would be a track written by the Tubes.
Oh my god, that's a good call. I never thought of that, but that's a great. Definitely sounds like a tube song.
Uh,
And it's just this one's just pure fun. I mean, this is just to me they're just rocking out, and the lyrics are just kind of you know welfare mothers make better lovers, and I just
yeah,
that whole like divorcee. It's very like you said, that's very tubes like.
yeah. Like that. This is kind of the last couple songs before the end are kind of like where originally I'd completely fall off with some of the album. But
Hmm.
listening to this with the mindset of kind of being more open-minded to it, and that whole kind of after punk kind of new wave kind of taking over, especially with bands like the Tubes and that. So that's kind of where I'm like, you know what? That makes more sense. But yeah, like the whole welfare mothers make better lovers. It's
Yeah.
something that's just such a great melody. And like you said, I think Neil was just kind of like, you know what, that sounds like a fun song. Let's throw that on the album.
Yeah, I mean, and I can picture them jamming on that whole down, 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 bam, down, 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 just jamming on that, and it's got that sort of roll that's almost like that Rolling Stones ish kind of
Yes.
vibe, that kind of that roll to the song, and it's got that crazy horse feel to it. I really enjoy this one. It's really just I just love it. Whenever I hear it, I turn it up. So there you go. That's a good sign, right?
Yeah. Song number 8, Sedan Delivery. Uh, I know Neil kind of said like a lot of these songs were written pre-punk and that,
Yeah.
but this definitely has a punk vibe to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was. He keeps saying he wasn't influenced by it, but I think he was. And
Yeah.
I there's no way he wasn't, because it was just everywhere at that time. And I think that this song, Sedan Delivery, this is one of the ones from the Zuma sessions from
Yeah.
'75. And I'm telling you, I don't think the Zuma session had this kind of craziness to it. This sort of the dang,
Probably
dang, 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 dang. It didn't have this like punk energy to it.
no. And it's interesting because I know he said he was heavily influenced by Devo more so, which led to a lot more high energy. But I think you're right. Like this sounds definitely like maybe not the time he wrote it, but it's definitely like the punk song of the album.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is like to this point in his career, this might be one of the heaviest songs he ever kind of did, as far as like just in your face kind of fast pace. And
Mm.
it was very unlike him, this song, I think.
Yeah.
But I think people loved that about it. I think people loved that it was different.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
completely like nothing else on the album, probably like nothing at the time you'd hear from Neil. So that's what they like. Same with the last song on this album, Hey Hey My, Into the Black. This to me, I know it gets quoted as being like maybe the start of grunge,
Hmm.
where that sound came from. I was listening to this. I also think this could be where industrial rock guitar starts
Oh wow.
as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
here. Because I'm listening to that guitar tone and I'm like, there's just something so metallic and industrial about this
Yeah.
song. And the way it's a lot more up tempo than the opener. And I love the way he sings it with the my, or hey, hey, my, rock and roll can never die.
And it translated so well to the heavy electric thing, right? It just
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing that he does that. I think that's what's so great about this record, is that he starts it out with an acoustic version of this, and then he just cranks out this awesome electric version at the end, and you're like, oh my god. And it's totally different, but it's great. And he's just digging in. He's like you said, he's I mean, this could be like the heaviest that we had heard Neil be at this point, because he plugged in his black Les Paul and cranked up his Marshall and just went nuts. And it
Yeah.
just and really dug in with his pick, and it's like I mean, it's heavy.
Yeah, that riff just translated so well to the electric as well
Yeah, it
from
did.
acoustic.
It
Like
did.
This is probably one of the first riffs I actually ever learned to play on guitar.
Yes, and it's not that hard. You can learn it pretty quickly and like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I got it." Like, it's not that hard, but it's so again, so effective, right? It's just
yeah.
that it's do 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 now, do do do
Mm.
now, bam, bam, bam. I mean, it's not that hard to learn.
No, and I love the dan, 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 dan.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just so abrasive
Those
compared to everything else.
it is, those just really heavy chords, like you said, almost industrial, like I mean, it's just crazy.
So that is the songs on the album. What you so like this whole album, my thoughts on it are it's a fantastic record. Like if you're gonna start with Neil Young, this might be the place to start because you do get a lot of the acoustic numbers, a lot of the gorgeous melodies, but then by the end you also get the heaviness.
Yes, you get both sides of Neil because that's really most of the time for a long time he was kind of playing both sides of he would do an acoustic track and then he would do an acoustic record and then he would do an electric record or he
Mm,
would he usually he was kind of flipping back and forth in the 70s between acoustic and electric. And to your point, this album has both.
yeah.
So, in spades. So this would be a good place to start if you were just like, oh, I don't really know Neil Young that well. I want to start somewhere. Where should I start? I think you're right. Start with this. You
Yeah,
know,
because if you're not into kind of that 80s electronic thing, I'd definitely say don't start with trans.
no, do not
Uh,
start with trans. No, don't start with everybody's rocking. Don't start with
yeah.
landing on water. No, none of these. No.
The one that gets mentioned, but I do like the title track for is This Note's for You.
Oh, I do. I think there's some really good songs on This Notes for You. It's not a great album, but there's some really good songs on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh
Freedom's another good one you could start with too. Freedom is kind of similar to this. Would you say? Because
yeah.
you know Freedom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The I think I love the acoustic version of Rockin' in the Free World,
Mhm.
and then combine that with the electric. And in the electric, he was kind of smart in the way he did the acoustic, but then for the electric song, he'd add a verse to it.
Right.
So it
Right.
did have its own different feel to it.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, for sure.
that is a good record. Like I'm
Mhm.
not sure if I like that as much as I do this. Because
No.
with Freedom, I do have to be in the mood to listen to that, kinda like a lot of, grunge albums. I That's kinda my feel, I have to be in the mood to listen to grunge.
No, I agree. I mean, I think and I don't think it's as consistent from a writing standpoint either as this one.
No.
It's not as no. It's just not as I mean, this one's just I don't really feel like I can listen to this record all the way through and no
Yeah,
problem. Don't skip anything and it's great.
and it's a easy digestible length
Yes,
for people,
absolutely.
and
Only 9 songs.
yeah, and none of them are excessively long, like, you could make it probably through the first 4 or 5 songs in this in less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, 6 right, exactly. It's like I always say back in the day when you were constricted by vinyl, which was, in some ways was a good thing, right?
Yeah,
You know?
that and you notice that. I remember I was talking with Tara about Evanescence and Bring Me to Life should have opened the album, or on the flip side on vinyl, it should have been the flip side opener.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes,
Same with
absolutely.
Dio's Holy Diver. I've always felt Holy Diver because of the way it introed should have
Yeah.
kind of started.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I know Stand Up and Shout's a great song, but it's just the way it intros it feels like Pink Floyd Shine on a Crazy Diamond
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
way it opens. But
Yeah. Absolutely. So, but yeah,
so
it's go ahead.
or
Sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think that this I wanted to say that this really feels like kind of the end of his golden streak. Like I always say that like Neil had this golden streak of albums I would even include the Buffalo Springfield in there. I mean, he didn't do all of he was just part of a band for that, but still, almost like 67 to 79, like was just like he was barely putting a foot wrong. It was just all really good stuff. And then after this, he kind of jumped into as we were just mentioned earlier, some of the albums where he started jumping into like genre experiments in the 80s, and it just became like, oh, here's another genre record, here's another, and it just wasn't quite the same after this record. Like this was like the last of like the golden. I mean, maybe people might not agree with me, but that's kind of the way I felt at the time.
Yeah. And how many bands from the 70s, it kind of felt like as soon as that decade switched over, they just struggled to adjust,
Yeah,
especially as being prog fans, or we are.
that's right.
That's how it
Yes.
felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, as Zappa would say, yeah, those record executives, you don't know what you like, but we do.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's no, and it's really true. I mean, the 80s were a new decade, and it was a new music coming in and new bands, and it was hard for a lot of legacy artists, to
Yeah,
adjust.
yeah, it
Yep.
was. But it's weird because there were so many where you look at them and you'd be prime for the 1980s with your
Yes.
sounds and styles, and they just never, for whatever reason, a lot of them took the decade off.
Yeah, right. Or broke up or whatever. Yeah, or
Yeah.
just couldn't. Yeah. I mean, it was really that I always say like 78, 79. Like didn't, ELP broke up, Yes broke up. A lot of the prog bands Gentle Giant started making different, like almost poppy records. It was like things just changed right around then.
Yeah. But anyway, that's
Anyway,
Neil Young's Rust Never Sleeps. Tom, I asked Tara this question. I'll ask you. If you had to give this a grade out of 10, what would you give it?
oh man, I got to give this a 10. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. I'm a huge Neil fan, and this is one of his absolute best records. So I'm giving it a 10. I don't do that very often, but on this one I'm doing it.
Yeah, for me, this is about a 9, mostly because I feel like Welfare Mother, Sedan Delivery, it lost me a little bit.
Hmm.
But even going back listening to it, everything else on this is so damn strong
Hmm.
that I can't go less than a 9.
Yeah. Yeah, that's strong. That's a great rating. That's awesome. That's 9 out of 10. That's
Yeah, most fans,
highly, highly, highly recommended.
very highly recommended. Anyway, Tom, what is coming up on curlessmania?
Well, let's see. It's interesting that we were talking about. We were just kind of touching on what's coming up on my channel because the next episode that's going to premiere coming up, I think this weekend, is Be the Producer or You're the Producer, where and this is XTC version where we're taking two albums that were released in '99 and 2000 and combining them. So and I think this is going to be an ongoing theme on my channel where you're the producer and you take an album and you try to make it better. And you were just talking about that, Dio, and you were just
Evanescence. Yeah.
Evanescence. You were just touching on that, where it's like, oh, this album would be better if you did these three things, or whatever.
I would probably be the best one to do that for Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Oh yes.
I sent Scott a Spotify link of my track listing for The Wall because I feel like that is what hinders that album so much, is not only the filler on it, but the track order.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
after side 2, the story no longer makes sense.
Right. Right. No, and it feels like they kind of by a lot of people talk about this with The Wall, that it feels like by the second side, and even people talk about this about The Lamb Lies Down too, where
Yeah.
by the second side it feels like they're filling in to make a double record, and it doesn't feel like it needed it.
Yeah.
And it just feel as strong as the first album, you know. But you're right. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what going to be an ongoing thing on my channel where I'm going to invite people on, and maybe if you're interested, maybe we'll do that because where you play the producer. You are the guy making the call, saying that, hey guys, I like that song, but I don't think I should make the album. And so it's sort of like messing with history. Some people don't love that, but I think it's fun. I think it's fun to do.
That I do that. That's what I love about Spotify is you can change the song order and give it a whole new life, something people haven't really ever thought about. Like, oh, this album sucks, but if you just change it around a bit,
Yeah,
doesn't make it a better, more digestible.
it might not suck as much. And also the idea that CDs, we just talked about this, sometimes the using up the CD, and it was like, okay, they just put 3 songs on here that didn't need to be. It would be stronger if they took those 3 songs, 2 or 3 songs off.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, that's coming up, and then of course I'm going to be doing more album battles. I'm going to do Stevie Ray Vaughan with Peter Kerr. I'm going to do Texas Flood versus Couldn't Stand the Weather. That's coming up next too.
Oh,
so yeah, a couple.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so two and that's kind of different for me. I'm trying to do some different stuff in 2025, some different artists, and we're going to do Soundgarden's coming up. I'm going to be doing what is it? Bad Motorfinger versus
Super Unknown.
Super Unknown. Yes. So
that should be good. My wife is a diehard Stevie Ray Vaughan fan.
Oh, really?
My father-in-law was in bands, loves Stevie Ray Vaughan, learned to play a lot of his stuff.
that's if he can play Stevie Ray Vaughan, that's pretty good. He must be a good player. So but yeah, no, that's some stuff coming up on Curlessmania. Check it out. Yeah, check out the channel. So
yeah. So once again, thank you, Tom, for being on here. Had a great time. Like always, thank you people so much for watching. Hopefully you go subscribe Curlessmania, great channel. Any guests I have on, I'll put all their details down in the description for you guys to go check out. But once again, peace.
Thanks, Wayne.
Not a problem. All right.
Is it still recording?